Alarms screamed like banshees across the command deck, their shrill cries wrenching the sterile silence into chaos. Jax's fingers hammered the translucent holographic keyboard with desperate urgency, each tap a frantic plea against the rising tide of doom. Sweat traced icy rivulets down his temples, stinging his eyes as the station trembled beneath the distant thrum of explosion. A bead of sweat dripped into his mouth, bitter and metallic, but he didn't dare pause. If they found him now, it was over. No second chances, no mercy. His mind raced faster than his trembling hands. If I don't crack this code, billions will die. The weight of that thought pressed down, suffocating, relentless. The station's lights flickered, threatening to plunge the deck into darkness. But Jax forced himself to ignore the creeping dread. There was no room for fear here, only raw, unyielding focus. Suddenly, the comms erupted with a harsh, alien transmission. It wasn't just noise, it was raw, encrypted, ominous. A message laced with cold menace. Jax's heart hammered in his chest as the alien script scrolled across his visor, indecipherable but unmistakably urgent. His fingers danced over the keyboard, inputting commands faster than reason could follow, pulling apart layers of code like a surgeon dissecting a living wound. "Come on, come on," he whispered under his breath, voice ragged, eyes locked on the shifting symbols. The station shook again, a distant blast rattling the bulkhead with a shudder that made his bones ache. "Jax, the power is unstable. We have less than 10 minutes before total system failure." His AI assistant's calm voice cut through the chaos, an eerie contrast to the blaring alarms. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the ache in his wrists. "Not now, Mara, I'm close." The alien code began to unravel, revealing chilling details, coordinates, fleet movements, tactical schematics. His stomach clenched. The invasion fleet was moving faster than anyone had predicted. The trembling of the space station was more than just vibrations. It was a countdown. Distant explosions echoed faintly, like thunder rolling over a war-torn horizon. Lights flickered in erratic stutters, each dip threatening to snuff out critical systems. Jax's breath came in shallow gasps, chest tight with tension. The command deck, usually a sanctuary of calculated control, was now a battlefield of nerves and raw panic. His eyes darted over the intercepted alien military transmission, stunned by its brutal clarity. The message was more than a warning. It was a blueprint for annihilation. Earth's defense fleet was the target, and the attack was imminent. "Mara," Jax's voice cracked, "what did you say? How soon?" The AI's response was without hesitation, cold and precise. "The invasion fleet will reach Earth's outer defenses in less than 3 standard hours. Their surprise assault will overwhelm current patrols before reinforcements can mobilize." Jax's fingers clenched into fists, nails biting into his palm. 3 hours, that's barely enough time to warn anyone. A brief pause filled the space between them, broken only by the crackling of the failing comms. "Jax," Mara's voice softened, "this isn't just an attack. It's a full-scale invasion. They've been hiding their numbers, their technology. We're outmatched." He swallowed hard, his throat dry. The truth settled like a stone in his gut. He wasn't just fighting for a station. He was fighting for the entire planet. "All right," he said, voice steady despite the turmoil, "we need to get this intel to Earth Command. Immediately, can you encrypt the data for secure transmission?" "I'm already working on it, but the station's power grid is unstable, and the alien signal is jamming outgoing frequencies." Jax slammed a fist onto the console, the force rattling the fragile hardware. "Then we reroute through the auxiliary channels. Anything to get this off the station." His gaze flicked to the viewport. Outside, the vast blackness of space was punctuated with distant, fiery flares, the remnants of skirmishes he couldn't even name. Each flash was a reminder that time was bleeding away. "Mara, prepare the emergency protocols. If the code isn't cracked soon, this station's going down, and I'm not getting off alive if they find me." "Understood," the AI replied, its tone unchanging but somehow tinged with urgency. Jax's mind surged back to the moment he'd first infiltrated this rogue station. A labyrinth of forgotten tech and shadowed corridors. He'd come seeking data, a simple hack to expose illegal weapons research. Instead, he'd stumbled onto something far deadlier. An alien conspiracy woven into the very core of the station's systems. Now, trapped in the belly of a ticking time bomb, he was humanity's last line of defense. His fingers flew again, guided by a mix of intuition and desperation. The alien encryption was unlike anything he'd seen. Layers of quantum scrambling, fractal ciphers that bent logic itself. Each breakthrough brought a rush of hope, quickly snatched away by the station's groans and flickering power. "Jax," Mara interrupted, "there's a secondary transmission. It's a priority message from the alien command. They're coordinating the initial assault wave. I'm isolating it now." Jax leaned forward, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. The garbled transmission twisted into a pattern, a chilling revelation. The invasion was synchronized, ruthless in precision. Earth's defense fleet would be caught off guard, decimated before they could mount a meaningful response. He swallowed the lump in his throat. If this gets out, if we can get this out, we might stand a chance. A sudden jolt shook the deck. The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into near darkness for a heartbeat before emergency systems kicked in with a harsh red glow. "Power's failing faster than predicted," Mara warned. "We have less than 5 minutes before total blackout." Jax's breath hitched. 5 minutes. He slammed a palm against the console, fingers trembling with raw adrenaline. "Don't fail me now, Mara. Crack that code, send the message. I'll hold this place together if I have to." Outside, the station's hull creaked ominously, a wounded beast fighting to stay alive in the void. Inside, Jax fought against the clock, against overwhelming odds, against the creeping certainty that this might be the last stand for billions. Yet, even as the alarms blared and the shadows deepened, he refused to surrender. Because failure wasn't an option, not when the fate of Earth hung by a thread. Jax's breath hitched as the alien transmission finally unraveled, a tangled web of symbols and frequencies that had tormented his mind since he first tapped into the rogue station's network. His fingers hovered, trembling over the translucent keyboard, eyes darting between streams of decoded data and the flickering red emergency lights that bathed the command deck in a hellish glow. The station groaned beneath him, its failing systems a cruel metronome counting down to oblivion. "Got it," he muttered, voice rough and hoarse from hours of strained silence. "Partial decryption, coordinates, fleet movements, tactical protocols. This isn't just reconnaissance. It's a blueprint for annihilation." His heart pounded, each beat a reminder of the stakes. "If this goes wrong, billions will die, and it might all be on me." He leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face, the coarse stubble rasping against his palm. Sweat slicked his brow, the cold metallic taste in his mouth thickening with dread. The station's dim lighting flickered again, threatening to plunge the room into darkness. Jax's pulse surged, no time to waste. "Mara," he rasped, "what's the status on the transmission? Can you complete the decryption?" The AI's voice was steady, unnervingly calm amid the chaos. "Processing at 67%, Jax. However, system integrity is deteriorating rapidly. Auxiliary power reserves are at 20% capacity. Time is not on our side." He clenched his jaw, the weight of his past failures pressing down like a vice. Memories of lost comrades and shattered commands flashed unbidden, moments when hesitation had cost lives. His exile from the military had been a bitter sentence, but now, trapped on this derelict station, the ghosts of his past whispered louder than ever. "This is your shot," he told himself, voice barely audible. "Redeem yourself or die trying." A sudden jolt slammed through the deck, sending a shudder up Jax's spine. The station's hull creaked ominously, groaning like a wounded beast. Warning sirens screamed anew, piercing the thick air. "Power surge detected," Mara announced. "Emergency protocols initiated, but the mainframe is critically unstable." Jax's fists slammed against the console. Damn it, we're running out of time. He pushed himself upright, muscles screaming in protest. His fingers danced feverishly over the console, initiating a manual override of the station's failing systems. Each command was a gamble. One wrong move, and the entire network would collapse, erasing the fragile progress he'd clawed out of the alien code. Come on, he whispered, teeth clenched, eyes burning with fierce determination. The alien transmission began to resolve into a coherent sequence, a chilling revelation. Fleet coordinates aligned with Earth's outer defense grids, revealing the enemy's precise approach vectors and assault timings. Jax's stomach twisted. The invasion was imminent, faster than any command had predicted. He cursed himself for the delay, the countless hours wasted in exile, the bitter isolation. If only I'd been here sooner. Mara, encrypt the data. Get it out before the station dies, he ordered, voice sharp with urgency. Attempting data compression and secure transmission through auxiliary relays, the AI replied. Signal interference from alien jamming is intensifying. Jax's hands trembled, sweat dripping onto the console. We don't have a choice. Route the signal through every available channel. If this doesn't reach Earth Command, everything's lost. His eyes flicked to the viewport, where distant bursts of light marked the skirmishes unfolding in the void. The silence outside was deceptive, a calm before the storm that threatened to swallow everything whole. A sudden hiss echoed from the station's ventilation system. Jax spun toward the sound, heart leaping. The air was thick with ozone and burnt circuitry. The creeping system failures were spreading like a virus. Life support is degrading, Mara warned. Oxygen levels will drop below safe thresholds within 10 minutes. Jax swallowed hard, the gravity of his isolation settling like a stone in his gut. This station was a tomb, and he was its sole occupant, racing against a clock that refused to pause. He paced the cramped command deck, fingers drumming nervously against a console. I can't do this alone, he muttered, voice raw. But who else is left to fight? His mind flickered to the faces he'd lost, the comrades who'd trusted him, the family he'd abandoned. Guilt gnawed relentlessly, but beneath the torment burned a fierce ember of resolve. This is for them, he vowed silently, for everyone counting on me to stop this. Suddenly, the console beeped. A new transmission, sharper, more urgent. Jax leaned in, eyes narrowing. The alien command's priority message was isolating itself, a pulse of cold menace slicing through the static. He deciphered the coordinates with breathless speed. The initial assault wave was synchronized with ruthless precision. Earth's defenses would be blindsided, overwhelmed before reinforcements could muster. 3 hours, he whispered, voice cracking. 3 hours until everything falls apart. Mara's voice softened, almost sympathetic. This is more than an attack, Jax. It's a calculated invasion, designed to erase human presence. Jax's fingers clenched into fists, nails digging into his palm. The station trembled again, lights flickering violently. Powers failing faster than anticipated, Mara added. Backup generators are offline. Mainframe stability is below critical thresholds. The weight of despair threatened to crush him, but Jax forced it back, steeling himself against the encroaching darkness. Send the transmission. Now, he commanded, voice steady despite the chaos. Encryption complete. Initiating transmission across all auxiliary channels. A tense silence filled the room as the data streamed out into the void. Jax's breath caught, every second stretched impossibly long. Then a jarring explosion rocked the station, throwing him against the console. Pain flared across his ribs, but he pushed himself up, eyes blazing. Not yet, he growled. Not today. The emergency lights bathed the command deck in crimson as the station's systems flickered on. The brink of collapse. Outside, space warred in silence, a cosmic battlefield that could decide humanity's fate. Jax locked his jaw, fingers trembling yet relentless. If this message reaches Earth Command, he thought fiercely, there's hope. There's a chance to fight back. And with that sliver of hope, he vowed to never surrender, not while breath filled his lungs and fire burned in his veins. Jax's fingers hovered over the console, hesitating for a fraction of a second, too long, perhaps, but the weight of his next move crushed down on him like a star collapsing. The alien station's hum had shifted, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Energy surges rippling through the power grid like invisible waves. His brows furrowed. Something was watching, something was detecting him. Warning signs, Mara's voice broke through the tense air, calm but edged with urgency. Energy fluctuations, matching known alien security protocols. Their systems are registering interference. Jax swallowed hard, the bitter metallic tang of adrenaline rising in his throat. He glanced toward the viewport, where the cold void of space stretched endlessly beyond the station's battered hull. Alien drone patrols, sleek, angular, almost insectal, were increasing in number, weaving through the dark like shadowy predators closing in. Drones are patrolling closer than before, Mara added. Their scan frequencies are intensifying. I recommend heightened stealth protocols. He clenched his jaw, his mind a storm of conflict. If I don't act, the invasion plans remain intact. But if I sabotage their drones, retaliation could obliterate this fragile station. Everyone here would pay the price. Jax pressed his palm against the console, eyes flicking between streams of encrypted code and the steadily rising drone presence. "What's the risk?" he asked, voice low, almost pleading. "Hi," Mara replied. "The drones are linked to a central command node. Any anomaly will trigger immediate countermeasures, both virtual and kinetic." He exhaled slowly, the ethical dilemma gnawing at him like a corrosive acid. Sabotage might buy Earth time, but what if the aliens retaliated by turning this station into rubble? Innocent lives hung in the balance, and yet inaction meant doom for billions. Jax's fingers trembled as he keyed commands, isolating a drone's data stream. The captured unit, disabled in a previous skirmish, lay dormant within his control interface, a potential weapon or a liability. "I have to try," he muttered, voice rough with resolve. Hours stretched as he worked, each keystroke a calculated risk. The alien drone's encryption shifted constantly, a digital chameleon adapting faster than Jax's fingers could follow. The station groaned under the strain. Systems flickered and failed, power reserves dwindling like sand through an hourglass. "Encryption's evolving," Mara warned. "They're closing in on the breach. Time is running out." Jax's breath hitched. His palms slick with sweat, he leaned closer, eyes burning with fierce concentration. "Almost there," he whispered. "Come on, come on!" Suddenly, the drone systems blinked alive on the holographic display, its cold, mechanical eye flickering, with an eerie, unblinking stare. A shiver ran down Jax's spine. This was no longer just code, it was a weapon. "Reprogramming sequence initiated," he said, voice taut with tension. "Redirecting attack parameters to target alien supply ship." Mara's voice dropped to a whisper. If successful, this could disrupt their logistics, delay the invasion. Jax nodded, fingers flying over the console. "Execute." The drone launched itself into the void, swift and silent, until suddenly a pulse of energy erupted from its core. The supply ship's hull flared with a brilliant explosion, a fiery blossom against the cold blackness. Jax's heart pounded in triumph, but it was short-lived. "Anomalies detected," Mara warned. "Alien Command is sending cyber operatives to trace the breach." Within moments, the station's systems shuddered as a hostile digital presence infiltrated the network. Alarms shrieked anew, red lights casting frantic shadows across the command deck. "We're under attack," Jax growled, "both in cyberspace and possibly physically." A metallic clang echoed from the station's inner corridors, a sound that froze the blood in his veins. The invaders weren't just hacking remotely. They were here, boarding the station with ruthless intent. Jax's mind raced, heart hammering like a war drum. "Mara, initiate lockdown protocols. Seal all access points." "Lockdown engaged," the AI confirmed. but they are bypassing security layers with advanced hacking tools. Jax grabbed a handheld pulse weapon from the rack, fingers tightening around its cold grip. He moved swiftly toward the corridor, eyes darting for signs of movement in the dim emergency lighting. Every step was a gamble, every breath a countdown. Voices echoed faintly, alien harsh, clipped commands layering over static. Jax's pulse quickened. He crouched behind a bulkhead corner, gripping the weapon like a lifeline. Jax, Mara's voice was urgent now. Cyber operatives are attempting to override your hacking interface. You must maintain control. I'm holding, Jax snapped, sweat stinging his eyes. His fingers danced over a secondary terminal, fighting off the invasive code like a gladiator battling unseen foes. A sudden blast rocked the corridor behind him. Someone breached the lockdown. Jax wheeled around, firing a burst of pulsing energy. The alien assailant was fast, but not faster than his desperation. The intruder collapsed, sparks flying from damaged armor. Jax exhaled, heart pounding, but the victory was hollow. More were coming. Back at the console, the virtual battle raged. Lines of code twisted and writhed. Alien operatives weaving through firewalls with lethal precision. Jax's vision blurred, his mind stretched thin between physical defense and digital warfare. Encryption is weakening, Mara warned. They're close to severing your connection. No, Jax said fiercely, teeth clenched. Not while I'm still breathing. He slammed a fist on the console, pushing every ounce of willpower into stabilizing the breach. The station trembled violently, systems flickering between life and death. He could almost hear the distant hum of the supply ship exploding, a small victory rippling across the void. But the price was clear. His breaths came ragged, muscles burning, mind fraying at the edges. The station was bleeding power, the alien assault relentless. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his comms, cold, mechanical alien. You cannot win, human. Surrender now, and your pain will be brief. Jax's fingers stilled for a heartbeat, then clenched tighter. I'm not surrendering, not today. The battle was far from over, but in that moment a fierce flame ignited within him. Against impossible odds, he had turned their own weapon against them, bought precious time for Earth's defenses. And he would fight, until the last drone fell, until the last code was cracked, until humanity's hope was no longer a whisper lost in the dark. The alarms screamed anew, sharper and more insistent than before, ripping through the station's claustrophobic corridors like a banshee's wail. Jax's breath caught in his throat as the viewport flickered, revealing the sudden appearance of alien assault ships converging with brutal precision. The station's skeletal frame groaned beneath the impact of their weapons, each blast a hammerstroke against the fragile sanctuary he'd fought so hard to protect. His fingers trembled, hovering over the console as memories surged like a tidal wave, betrayals etched deep into the ledger of his soul. Faces flashed before him. Comrades turned traitors, whispered lies that shattered alliances, the chilling silence that followed every loss. Each memory was a jagged shard, fueling a fierce resolve even as it threatened to fracture his focus. Not this time, not here, not now. Mara, he rasped, voice tight with tension, they're coming in hard. How long before the mainframe crashes? How long before Earth hears nothing? The AI's voice was calm, almost eerily detached. Communication is severed. All outgoing channels jammed. Estimated blackout in less than 5 minutes. Jax's jaw clenched until his teeth ground together. Isolation wrapped around him like a suffocating shroud. Out there, beyond the cold void, Earth was blind and deaf to his plight. Cut off, alone, but not defeated. A bitter pang twisted inside him as his thoughts drifted to the alien technology pulsing. Beneath his fingertips, a sleek, sinister force that thrummed with otherworldly power. It was the key to their downfall, yet it felt like a taint, a line he swore never to cross. Using their own tools, tools forged in silence and malice, to fight back felt like sacrilege. Am I becoming what I despise? The question gnawed at him, but necessity drowned doubt. His eyes flicked to the dormant drone array displayed on the holoscreen. Sleek, insectal machines waiting to be unleashed. They were weapons of war, instruments of death. Yet now they were his last hope. The thought of turning them loose, of sparking a drone uprising within the station, twisted his gut into knots. If this goes wrong, the station shuddered violently, throwing Jax against the console. His breath hitched as sparks rained down from fractured conduits. "Damn it!" he growled, wiping blood from a cut above his brow. The alien assault had begun in earnest. "Jax!" Mara's voice cut through the chaos, steady but urgent. "The assault wave is closing. They intend to eliminate the hacker. Your presence is a threat to their command." He swallowed hard, the weight of impossible choices settling like iron in his chest. The civilian crew, scattered through the station's labyrinthine decks, were innocent, caught in the crossfire of a war beyond their comprehension. Launching a full-scale drone rebellion meant risking their lives, the very station's integrity. But hesitation meant certain annihilation. His fingers danced over the console, heart pounding with the rhythm of a war drum. "I don't have a choice," he muttered to himself, voice barely above a whisper. "If I don't act, this station and Earth will fall." Memories of past failures flickered once more. The faces of those he couldn't save. The bitter taste of betrayal, when allies turned foes in the blink of an eye. That fire, born from loss and hardened by pain, surged within him. This is for them, for everyone who believed in a future. He locked eyes with the dormant drone control panel, fingers hovering for a heartbeat before plunging into the command sequence. Lines of alien code twisted and writhed beneath his touch, a digital serpent slipping through his grasp yet yielding to his will. Each keystroke was a silent oath, an unspoken promise to fight tooth and nail for humanity's survival. "Initiating drone uprising," he announced, voice steady but laced with grim resolve. The station trembled as dormant drones flickered to life, their mechanical eyes glowing with eerie blue light. One by one, they shifted from passive sentinels to lethal predators, their weapons systems coiling like vipers ready to strike. Outside, the alien fleet faltered, caught off guard as their own weapons turned inward. Plasma beams once aimed at the station now tore through enemy hulls, explosions blossoming like deadly fireworks in the void. The tide of battle shifted, but the cost was immediate. "Jax!" A crackling transmission broke through the static, a voice sharp and panicked. "The station's structural integrity is compromised. Civilian casualties are mounting. You have to stop this." His heart clenched. The faces of the innocent flashed before him. Engineers, medics, families trapped in the crossfire. Yet his voice was unwavering. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "This is the only way." A sudden jolt threw him to the floor as the station convulsed under alien retaliatory strikes. Pain flared across his ribs, but his mind was razor-sharp, focused on the impossible task ahead. He crawled back to the console, hands shaking but relentless. "Mara, reroute power to drone control nodes. Divert all resources to maintain the uprising." "Power reserves critical," Mara warned. "The station may not survive." Jax met the AI's calm gaze, if she had eyes, and nodded. "Then we go down fighting." As the drones swarmed through the station's corridors, engaging alien boarding parties with ruthless efficiency, Jax retreated to the command deck's core. His breath came fast, every inhale a battle against the suffocating tension. "If this is the end," he thought, "then let it be for something greater than myself." His inner monologue unfolded, raw and unguarded. "I've buried friends, been betrayed by those I trusted, watched hope flicker and fade. But today I choose to stand, to fight, to be the spark in the darkness. If death comes, it will find me armed with purpose." The station's lights flickered violently, systems cascading toward failure, but the drone rebellion surged forward like a storm. Alien vessels erupted in flames, their sleek forms tearing apart as humanity's stolen weapons turned the tide. Jax's fingers hovered over the final command. The decision was irreversible, a gambit with stakes higher than life itself. With a breath that tasted of fire and steel, he pressed the key. The uprising was unleashed. Outside, the battle raged anew, a chaotic symphony of destruction and defiance. Inside, Jax stood alone amidst the storm, a solitary sentinel guarding the fragile hope of a world on the brink. And as the station trembled beneath the fury of unleashed drones, Jax embraced the possibility of sacrifice, knowing that in this final act, humanity's chance was born. The last flicker of power died in the console as the station shuddered violently, a wounded beast gasping its final breath. Jax gritted his teeth, every muscle trembling from exhaustion and pain, his vision blurred but burning with fierce determination. Outside the viewport, the alien invasion fleet, once an unstoppable force, convulsed in chaos, stricken by the very drones he had reprogrammed to turn against them. Explosions rippled through enemy lines like wildfire, shards of burning metal drifting against the infinite black. The tide had turned, but the cost was written deep into the bones of the shattered station. Jax's breath came ragged, each inhale a battle against the tightness constricting his chest. His fingers, slick with sweat and trembling, hovered over the console's fractured interface, searching for any glimmer of life among the dying systems. The emergency lights cast a sickly red glow, painting ghostly shadows across the warped bulkheads. Somewhere deeper in the station, the faint echoes of alarms mingled with the distant thumping of structural stress, ominous reminders that this fragile haven was crumbling. "Mara," Jax croaked, voice barely above a whisper. "What's the status?" The AI's voice, calm as ever, sliced through the thick silence. "Critical damage throughout the station. Life support failing in 90 seconds. Structural integrity below 20%. Escape pod bay compromised but functional." Jax's lips tightened into a grim line. Escape was no longer a choice, it was a necessity. Every instinct screamed to stay, to fight until the last spark of resistance was snuffed out. Yet hope, fragile and flickering, urged him toward survival. "Prep the pod launch sequence. I'm getting out of here." Seconds later, the station lurched again, a violent jolt that sent him sprawling to the cold metal floor. Pain flared sharply in his ribs, a raw reminder that his body was as battered as the station itself. He forced himself up, every movement a trial of will. Blood trickled from a fresh cut along his temple, mingling with the grime on his face. "Jax, your vitals are critical. You require immediate medical attention," Mara warned, her tone clinical yet edged with concern. "I'll live," he muttered, voice hoarse. "Just get me out." The corridor to the escape pod bay was a gauntlet of darkness and debris. Sparks rained from ruptured conduits overhead, casting erratic shadows that danced like phantoms. Jax's boots clattered against the metal grating, each step echoing hollowly in the confined space. His thoughts churned, a tempest of memories, regrets, and the heavy weight of sacrifice. All those lives lost, for what? He clenched his jaw, fighting the sting of guilt that threatened to drown him. But maybe, just maybe, this was worth it. A sudden burst shook the corridor, dust and small shards falling around him. He staggered, catching himself against a twisted support beam. "Damn it," he growled, teeth clenched. The station's collapse was accelerating. Reaching the pod bay, Jax found the last escape pod battered but intact. His hands fumbled with the controls, fingers numb and clumsy. The panel flickered uncertainly, struggling against failing power grids. "Come on, Mara," he urged, voice strained. "Help me get this online." "Pod life support is limited. Approximately 15 minutes of autonomous operation," Mara responded. "Launching sequence ready. Standing by for manual override." Jax's heart pounded as he slumped into the cramped pod seat, straps tightening around him like a shroud. The metal walls pressed close, a claustrophobic coffin hurtling through the void. He activated the launch sequence, the pod shuddering as magnetic clamps released. Outside, the station's hull cracked and groaned, fragments peeling away like the skin of a dying beast. As the pod ejected, Jax exhaled a shuddering breath, sweat mingling with tears he refused to shed. His body ached from the battle, a war not only against alien invaders, but against the shadows inside himself. The sterile hum of the pod systems was a fragile lullaby amid the chaos. Status report, he whispered, voice raw. Escape trajectory stable. Communications offline due to jamming. Estimated time to Earth orbit, 24 minutes, Mara replied. Jax's gaze drifted to the viewport, where Earth's blue-green orb hung fragile and distant against the black canvas of space. The sight stirred a bittersweet ache deep in his chest, a cocktail of hope and wary vigilance. We survived, but at what cost? The faces of those lost flickered in his mind, the engineers, the civilians caught in the crossfire, the friends betrayed and fallen. The drone uprising had saved Earth's defenses, but it had also unleashed devastation within the station's walls. Innocence had paid the price for his desperate gambit. A hollow silence settled over him, broken only by the steady beep of the pod's diagnostic systems. Jax curled into himself, exhaustion pulling at the edges of his consciousness. Yet beneath the fatigue burned a quiet ember, a resolve tempered by sacrifice. "Did we do the right thing?" he muttered aloud, voice barely audible in the confined space. Mara's reply was measured, almost philosophical. In war, choices are rarely clear. The burden of survival is heavy, and trust in technology can be both salvation and curse. Jax closed his eyes, the weight of command settling like a stone. I carry those choices now, the cost of victory and the cost of what we lost. Minutes passed in heavy silence, the pod drifting steadily toward Earth's embrace. Outside, stars twinkled coldly, indifferent witnesses to the endless cycle of conflict and hope. Then a soft chime interrupted the stillness. The pod's comm flickered weakly to life, a faint transmission crackling through the static. Earth command receiving, data intact. Reinforcements mobilizing, Mara announced, a note of cautious optimism threading her voice. Jax's lips curved into a weary, fragile smile. Relief washed over him like a tide, but wary eyes scanned the stars beyond. "Not over," he whispered. "Not yet. We'll fight again if we have to." The pod's engines hummed steadily, carrying him away from the ruins of the station and toward a future uncertain but alive. Jax watched Earth's sky from afar, a sentinel changed, scarred but unbroken. In the vast silence of space, hope flickered like a distant star, fragile yet unyielding. And as the pod sailed through the void, Jax vowed to bear the burden of choice, to guard the fragile flame of humanity's resilience against the darkness still lurking beyond the stars.